Good evening. The time is now 6 o'clock, and the date is Tuesday, February 3rd, and we're going to be calling the meeting to order. Can you please read the roll call?
Owens,
Here.
Rosas,
Present.
Baker,
Here.
Comstock, Crombie,
Here.
Drangler,
Here.
Jacobs.
Yep.
And we have quorum.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes and the January 6, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we approve the minutes? All right then. All those in favor say aye. All those not in favor say nay. Okay, motion carries. Let's see, next on the agenda, citizen appearance, public comment. So is there anybody that is in the audience right now or online that would like to come up here and speak about something that's not on the agenda? If you would like to, there's forms to fill out, but it doesn't look like anybody in the audience is ready to come up here and speak on something. So the next item on the agenda is council liaison committee member reports. Is there anybody up here that has any reports they want to give, or? All right. We should all say kudos to Casey Drangler, Alder Drangler. He took first place in his age category in the hibernation hustle, and I think it was 20th overall. So, it was such a fun weekend with our Parks and Recreation Department did an amazing job with all the events. I also was in the race, and I walked it, and I think we came to the home stretch, so I think we came in last place. In fact, I know we did, but we just walked it. We just did it for fun. But anyways, next on the agenda is unfinished business. Consideration, discussion, and possible action on nonprofit funding policy. And if there's anyone here in the audience that would like to talk about this agenda item, there are forms to fill out, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have talked about this policy several times, so this is its next return to you. I did incorporate one revision from Alder Owens, as I stated in my memo, and then I also incorporated some changes based on feedback I received from Susan, who works in fundraising at Sunshine Place. She was kind enough to give us some very substantive and thoughtful feedback. After I sent you my memo last week, I did also receive feedback after the agenda deadline from Prairie Music and Arts, which was primarily about other city issues, but they did say they reviewed the process and it seemed fairly straightforward and understandable. And then I received feedback earlier today from Colonial Club, who did express some concerns about what this could mean for their current funding arrangement and what could be done there, because they believe that the services they provide are very important to residents of our community. And we are a large funding source for them. So in talking about the policy tonight, I don't have anything additional to share beyond the revisions that you've seen and what was in the memo. I did just want to share that additional feedback that came in after the agenda deadline. So the policy is yours to discuss and amend as you see fit. And then if there is any other discussion that you'd like to have on what we would like to do with our currently existing funding arrangements, as a reminder, we do have those partnerships out there. And we would need to determine if we wish to continue those as is, if we wish to sunset them at a certain point, or how we would want to address those. And that's a decision that I will leave in council's purview, because the awarding of this funds is something that's within your legislative discretion. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that's where we're sitting as of now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's bring this back up here. Alder Owens.
Thank you. After considering this policy for quite some time and some input from especially the Colonial Club, which is in our district, I was concerned that we were taking these organizations from being a part of the continuing part of the budget to having to face uncertainty every single year. And while we want a policy that we can apply to all nonprofits, several nonprofits in particular, that just doesn't seem to be fair to me to create a policy that creates uncertainty, especially when these are critical services offered in the community. So, and I worked with our city attorney on language, and what I'd like to do is propose an amendment to Section 6, strike the last sentence, and I will read this.
There are 2 6s.
Let's see. All right, funding agreements will last for 1 year. When council makes an initial award to a nonprofit, they may authorize renewal for up to 4 years. Contracts that are approved as renewable will only be renewed if renewal funding is authorized during the annual budget process and the nonprofit is compliant with the reporting requirements in their agreement. And I've shared that language with our clerk so that she has it. But that's the intent, that that way these nonprofits would have a window of 5 years potentially that they could rely on funding, pending available of funding.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so now we can discuss this. Alder Comstock.
I have a question about that. When you're saying it could be funded, sort of a guarantee funding for 5 years, is that everybody who's awarded money, and we only do this once every 5 years, or is that certain organizations will get the 5-year option? How are you going to determine who gets it and who doesn't?
The way I'm proposing it is that it would apply to everyone who receives funding. I thought about trying to single out several organizations, which I would like to do, but I think it may run the risk of getting us in court, to be very honest with you, because then we're not treating all of them the same way. So it's a compromise and an attempt to balance,
So that,
realizing it's not perfect.
I'm sorry, but from what I'm hearing, or the way I'm interpreting this, is we would only be awarding money once every 5 years.
No, they would have to come back every year, and the MOU will have agreements on what is to be reported, and then we would review that each and every year. But the idea is that it's a renewal process. They don't have to apply every year. They would apply in year 1, and then they could ask for a renewal in year 2, 3, 4, and 5, without being a formal review process.
So right now, we have the Colonial Club, for example. What you're saying, I'm trying to understand this.
Sure.
What you're saying is that they do have to apply, or,
They would apply in year 1,
okay,
and that gets reviewed just the way the process is outlined in the policy.
okay,
But then for the second year, they would simply ask for a renewal. They would make their report to council, and then council would review as part of the budget to include that in that year's budget.
so for year 27 is what they would be applying for then?
The first year, they'll apply in 27,
Okay,
and then in 28, it could be renewal, 29, 30, and so
okay,
forth.
yep,
Right.
okay, I got it.
Yep.
Now, I think community schools, their expiration, they have like 18 months. So what would we do with community schools then?
That is correct. There is an 18-month termination of or intent to non-renew within that contract. So my suggestion with the contracts that currently exist is if council wanted to kind of sunset those and have everyone go through the application process so that all organizations had sort of a fair and equitable chance to apply for the funds, would be that we notify those organizations that their contract will be non-renewed, either at the end of the contract or at the soonest possible date that we could. So with community schools, I think we would have already potentially missed the 18 months. I have to go back and double check on that, but we would let them know then, like, hey, there would not be further extensions of your agreement beyond that expiration of the time period. And my thought process there is obviously we don't want to terminate a contract mid-contract if at all possible. That's a bad business practice and doesn't get us a great reputation as someone to do business with. but it also would allow those organizations then time to plan and say, okay, if my contract expires at the end of 27 or the end of 28, I know that I need to be going forward and applying for city funding in this next cycle if I want to continue receiving it.
Okay. Any other questions? Alder Baker.
First of all, I want to say thank you because what I picture is people being involved with this, how many people and the time and effort every year of doing this. The question I have is how do we calculate the renewal process? What has to be achieved to get that renewal?
So each organization will have a memorandum of understanding, which is outlined in the policy.
Yep.
And they'll report the data. And based on that data, I would assume that something would be renewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Alder Rosas.
I think I don't know if this is for Aaron or not, but, we're going through a referendum. And this gives the appearance that we are not cutting on costs, but kind of adding to it. So can you clarify that for me, please?
I think what Alder Owens is suggesting is that even though there could be multi-year agreements with entities, that those agreements would have out clauses within them that if the city was unable to provide sufficient funding to meet the agreement, that the city would have the ability to an out clause, essentially. And so the city would be protected in the sense of if funding for some reason was unavailable, referendum was not successful, or there's other pulls on the city's funding, that we would be able to exit these agreements.
Thank you, Aaron. And this is for Kathleen, I guess. You said there's a couple of these that are coming to an end on the contract. Can you share that with us?
Sure. So our current funding partners are community schools, Colonial Club, Sunshine Place, and Prairie Music and Arts. We have multi-year agreements in place with both Prairie Music and Arts and community schools. So those were agreements that were put into place, I believe, at the request of Alder Comstock and former Alder Benedict, as those funds were awarded. So Prairie Music and Arts had a 5-year funding agreement, and I believe community schools runs through the end of 2028. I can pull that date up for you real quick if you give me just a second.
Sure. Thank
So
you.
those contracts we would obviously want to probably honor through the remainder of the contract and then have the conversation about going forward. They would need to go through and apply under the same process. I think the trickier piece there is with Colonial Club and Sunshine Place, because those have for decades now been included in the cost to continue budget. So there hasn't been an MOU put into place with those organizations, and there hasn't been any sort of like renewal or review of the funding mechanism. It's just there in the cost to continue. Obviously, as we approach levy limits, I think council may choose to approach some of those things differently, and you may wish to have the review of them. So that's where I would recommend going through the process and then getting these agreements in place. And as Elder Owen stated with his amendment, council could then choose to say at the time of awarding funding, we're going to make this a renewable thing where you have the option to come back in for a few more years and get funding, assuming some is available. Or you could say, oh, you're coming in to ask for one-time funding to improve your facility. So in this case, we're not going to make it renewable, but because you've specifically said this is a one-time sort of one-off need.
Thank you.
Okay, Alder Comstock.
I feel pretty good about what you're suggesting. I think it makes it much more reasonable for people who need the funding and are requesting the funding. I just do have a couple of questions related to that. You've said 5 years. What went into your thinking about 5 years as opposed to 3 or 7? Why did you pick 5?
In discussions, we started at 2, and I wasn't happy with 2, and then it went to 3, and I wanted 5. So we ended at 5. So it's a discussion and a compromise, I would say.
Okay,
So I'm not wedded to specifically 5 years, but I thought for these organizations, as rock solid as they are in our community, that 5 years was a compromise window.
Okay, so that's actually discussable. I mean,
Oh, sure.
So we could have conversation about that selection. The other is, could I ask you to repeat what your motion was? Was it just for the change there, or was?
Could you repeat that? You probably do better.
Yes. So what's on the table is a motion to amend the policy to strike the last line of section 6 and replace with funding agreements will last for 1 year. When council makes an initial award to a nonprofit, they may authorize renewal for up to 4 years, I believe is what you had said.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
That's right. To get 5, yeah. Sorry.
yes, okay.
Oh, I see.
Contracts that are approved as renewable will only be renewed if renewal funding is authorized during the annual budget process and the nonprofit is compliant with the reporting requirements in their agreement.
Okay, thank you. What I'm feeling is that that's another variable that needs to be worked out. And so in my mind, I don't know where everybody wants to go with this tonight, but in my mind, it goes back until those statements are solidified, the number of years and the statement regarding how that's going to happen, what does everybody do at the end of a year and end of the next year and the end of the next year. I think that needs to be worked out before we look at the whole, because it's meant to be part of the policy, but it's not clear yet it's not settled yet, I don't think. So that means, in my mind, none of it's settled.
Okay.
It needs to go back until we get something firm, and I would include in that the criteria that you would use to continue with the funding. There has to be some reason that they're asking for more funding or asking to continue the funding, and some reason to say, yes, you can continue the funding.
My concept was initially that in year 1, they would come and ask for funding, and then council would determine if that is eligible for renewal. Then at that point, council would be voting on the first year amount and saying, yes, this is renewable. And then the process, you're right, the process is not explicit in how they would ask for renewal, but we could certainly continue to work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Jacobs?
I have a lot of questions. This is the first time I've heard of this, first time I heard of the proposal, so I don't have it all formulated, and I certainly don't have the right language for it. But first I want to ask Kathleen, this process for application, how arduous is it?
So the application project itself is pretty straightforward. It is attached in the back of the policy. So it's a couple pages of a form. I think it's 2 pages in its current iteration, but let me double check just to make sure that didn't go into 3 with some of the revisions. Yeah, the application is 2 pages.
Okay. Melanie, you don't have to get up, but can I ask you from a distance, and I'll repeat your answer. How long did it take you to fill this out?
I haven't done an application yet. I've just given comments in regards to the proposal.
Okay, thank you. So then my follow-up question is, and Kathleen, I guess I'm putting you on the spot, even though you're not the right person to put on the spot, which is, after you filled this out 1 year, how difficult would it be to fill it out again the next year?
I would imagine it wouldn't be particularly difficult, and that was part of my goal in designing the form. Is I know oftentimes when we apply for grants from the state or federal government, it's like a 47-page application, and we have to list every blade of grass in the park that we're going to put the path through. So I tried to make this straightforward enough that this is information our local organizations would either already have as part of their financial reporting or should be able to easily obtain. I didn't want to make it a difficult process because that takes them away from doing the community supporting work that they do.
I understand. So this is where I'm having some I have 2 troubles with this, and here's one of them, which is this is not an arduous process. It's fairly easy. And if we have the power to revoke it at any given year, why do we need to do it more than 1 year? That's a reasonable question. Now, you might argue so that they can plan ahead. Now, my statement here is certainly not against the Colonial Club, because I think I voted yes for every outlay of money to the Colonial Club in the last 10 years. Melanie's shaking her head, yes, so I have, okay? and I don't see that this is something that we would probably ever say no to. I mean, maybe we commit 1 year to 50,000, maybe next year, they don't need that much. I doubt that'll ever happen, but maybe we'll only give 40. Then maybe next year they need 80, we give 80. I don't like the idea of setting this in advance and just having renewal when it seems to me that it's not necessary. Not to mention when other applications come in that we might decide to have more need and may not have the funds, but this money is already committed to this place. To me, that doesn't make sense the way we've done it in the past. That's not the way we have to keep to. But if there's going to be any kind of extension at all, I would say 2 years is the maximum. Because any organization can plan out 2 years, say, okay, we had 50,000 last year, not coming in next year. Let's prepare for that. 4 years out, that puts us too much on the hook. And especially if we have an out clause that we can cancel any given year, all we're doing is saving them the time of filling out the paperwork, which is mostly cut and paste from the previous year. So until or unless this comes back differently, I won't support it, but I mean, I'm just one vote.
Kathleen, I know the city of Madison, I've been told has changed their policy many times. Do they have a time frame at all?
Sure. So
Do you
they
know?
do have a time frame. I specifically looked this afternoon after Elder Owens reached out to me about this possible amendment. What Madison did. So they recently did an RFP process to fund organizations that support the aging population. And they did that RFP because they hadn't done one since 2016, and they wanted to approach it from a new lens to make sure that they were reaching out to underserved populations, whether that be minorities or people of other diverse backgrounds who weren't necessarily being reached by their current funding sources. They structured theirs that it was a 1-year agreement that would be renewable for up to 4 years. So that's kind of where I modeled the language that I gave to Elder Owens at his request. My initial policy that I provided to you did not allow for a renewal, and it would have organizations come in each and every year. My thought process there is that that would be the most fair and defensible from everyone always has an equal shot at the amount of the pie that's available. However, I also recognize that with some of our longer term funding partners, we may wish to offer them the opportunity to have a longer arrangement, which is why I mirrored that language off of what Madison did in their RFP. And I think they ended up going from funding, I think it was 6 organizations, and they're now funding something like 13. So they increased their funding, which necessarily resulted in fewer funds to some of the organizations that had already been funded, but they felt they were that way of spreading it more equitably across the community.
Okay, I think Alder Jacobs, you had something.
Yeah,
else
I'm
you
just
wanted
now thinking about this. So I think that the idea is for nonprofits to have an expectation that this money is coming. And I understand that and appreciate that. But I'm remembering what happened a number of years ago in Fitchburg. I know Alder Crombie will remember this, that they had set up a similar system. And then when they faced a financial crisis, I guess like we're facing a financial crisis, they had to announce to the nonprofits that the money was not going to be renewed. And there was a huge public outcry against this because this money became an expectation. And I don't know that it's a good idea to build into our budget an expectation to fund nonprofits. On an annual basis, I think that's a great idea. I do not personally have a problem with dedicating taxpayer dollars to nonprofits that do the work that serve the community. But I don't know that we should bind future councils to our decisions at that given moment. That's all.
So do you not think that being a part of the cost to continue budget, which is never reviewed, is it the guarantee that you've just expressed?
No, that's not the same. The cost to continue budget is reviewed every year by the people on the council, Rex.
Okay, so say you.
So say it happens every year.
Okay, Alder Baker.
So Rex, one of the issues I had was because we're doing an MOU, which really isn't a contract, it's just an agreement. But the nonprofits do get, they're relying on that 4 years of dollars coming in, whatever that amount is. And to have it be pulled away, I don't know if that's fair to the nonprofit. So I think there's the concern that we as the city could take that funding away. So Mike's got a good point in there where we don't want to have that situation. I appreciate the multi-year because it's going to give us better efficiency. I think it would be better efficiency. But I'm concerned about being able to pull the dollars away.
But we could do that now if part of when we review that cost to continue budget. There is no guarantee. So if that's the argument, that's kind of a false argument, to be honest with you.
Well, if you think you're going to get $100,000 for the next 5 years, for each of those 5 years, and all of a sudden the city goes, "Oh, sorry, we're out of money. We had to buy our fire engine. Sorry, chief." Wherever he is. That'd be a cheap fire engine, wouldn't it? Maybe some tires.
But that can. I'll interpret. But that can happen under the current system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you've just said it can, because as you pointed out, we review the cost to continue budget every year. So it could happen any year.
But they've got it for that year. Once it's been approved, they have the funds coming in.
Right.
If it goes to the second year, we may say, or the council may say, sorry, we don't have the funds.
Well, and that's why I built that language into this policy. We have to review it still every year,
Right. Okay.
depending on where we're at. But I'm just looking for a way to make the change, to take them out of the cost to continue budget, less uncertain for those nonprofits, and to continue the services that we know we want. So just the mechanism of how to get there.
I feel like we're saying, here, we're going to promise to do this, but we may not do that.
Well, that's always the case, Bill.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. This is government.
I'm sorry, Mike.
And it looks like Kathleen pulled up the current fund, the expiration dates. I don't think you had this on the PowerPoint or what you presented to us.
Didn't have this in my previous presentation. I put this together after our conversation last week, Alder Crombie, because you said it may be helpful as we're discussing it. So I wanted to pull it up. So
Right.
this is the amount of funding that's in our current 2026 budget for each of our 4 funding partners.
One more to make.
This does not include the one-time capital contribution to Sunshine
didn't know
Place
this was
that council earlier approved. And this is the expiration date for those agreements, which do have agreements.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared for
Yeah.
that.
And then Alder Jacobs.
Yeah, so I just want to, if I can just address Rex's point, which was, well, if it's the same thing, well, then it's the same thing. There's no reason to do this. I would start with that. But I think more importantly, what we're really saying is we're giving away taxpayer dollars, and what we're asking the nonprofits to do is once a year to fill out a 2-page application, most of which will be cut and paste from the previous year. So if it's no difference, if we can cancel in any given year, then we should keep the process as proposed, is the conclusion I've come to.
If I could,
Aaron.
Madam President, if I could just add, and obviously it's a policy decision for the council, but maybe what would help is the current the process that is being proposed in this policy is an RFP process, essentially. So what you'd be going out and doing is essentially shopping for services. What the longer contract would do, and I'll let you determine the value of it, is you'd basically be able to say to agencies like the Colonial Club, we are not going to shop for those services annually, and we are willing to stay with you for a longer period. Obviously, if funds are not available in either circumstance, the current circumstance or in this, then no one gets the dollars. But essentially, I believe what Alder Owens is trying to accomplish is that you are moving from a, for lack of a better word, guaranteed relationship with some of our partners like Colonial Club, like community schools, where we do not send out an RFP for either entity and say, are there multiple entities that provide adult care services, for example, or other vendors that provide things that community schools provides. So what's essentially doing is saying, you are our vendor for, in Alder Owens's case, 5 years. If we have money, we will continue to pay you for those services. If we don't have money, though, no one gets those services, or no one provides us those services. So that's kind of, I think that's the intent, Alder Owens. I hope I'm speaking correctly there, is that you're essentially guaranteeing that you are not going to shop for other providers during that period for those long-term entities like community schools and Colonial Club. You will commit to them as long as there are dollars available, and if there are no dollars, no one has access to them. Hoping that helps.
That helps. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. So anybody else before we vote?
Yeah, I have one other thing. It's not related to that. I said originally I had one question before I heard Rex's proposal, and that was the Section 5. It says that there's 3 residents who will be appointed by the mayor who will be on the committee to determine this. I'm wondering why we've decided to include residents. I ask that because while they may have expertise, it removes us from the process, the responsibility of the citizens' money. And obviously, residents who have fit the criteria you say here may very well have vested interests in the nonprofits who are asking for money.
Sure, those are good questions. So I included this in my last round of revisions at the request of Elder Owens, who wanted residents to have the opportunity to participate in the process as well. Those residents would serve on the work group along with the staff that were appointed by the city administrator, and that work group would then make a presentation to the council. The ultimate decision to award funds would still rest within the hands of the council. So you aren't delegating authority. This would just kind of be the group that reviews and scores the rubrics, and then that would still be presented to you, and you as council are still free to award the funds.
Yeah, okay. Reviews, and the key word there is scores. That's the key word here.
That is.
If residents are to be involved at all, and I suppose that's okay, I think they would have to be ex officio and not have scoring capability, because again, they're going to score their own groups better and possibly score other groups that might compete against them for dollars less.
Sure. And I tried to address that concern somewhat by including language that if you were affiliated with a group that was seeking funding, so if, for example, you were on the board of one of these entities, you could not apply to serve on this working group if your entity was planning to seek funding that year, to try to reduce that conflict. Obviously, I also recognize that there's lots of people who don't serve on boards, but maybe on a committee or have a regular volunteering relationship with. I think if you wanted to make an amendment, once we have addressed this amendment, to have them be ex officio participants and not score, that's certainly something the council could take up. My initial thought was to have it be staff only in the initial review process in place it could go quicker. Obviously, it's often easier to convene a meeting of people who are here 40 hours a week than it is to bring in outside people who have full-time careers and obligations in their life outside of working here. Alder Owens did want the opportunity for residents to come in, especially because this is sort of a, I don't want to say one and done, but a quick process. So this isn't like committing to serve on Plan Commission or PFC where you've signed your life away for 5 years to be a member of this board. You would come in, work with the staff, and then come out. So I am open to whatever the council wants to do. That's truly your decision. I just wanted to explain my thought process and how it was originally structured. And Elder Owens, if I misspoke on your intent, please correct me.
Right. My concern was I didn't think it was fair that city staff be the only ones scoring. That this is a public process, and I thought we ought to involve some citizens. How they get selected or whether they're ex officio or not would be fine with me.
Yeah.
I just wanted citizen input, not just staff input.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So then can I make an amendment to the motion?
So at this point, just to be clear, and I realize this is probably a little wonky parliamentarily, right now there was never a motion to adopt the policy.
Oh, okay.
We have
Yeah.
a
You're
motion
sorry,
from
I'm
Alder
sorry.
Owens to amend this particular portion. So if you wouldn't mind holding that motion until we've addressed that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. And do we vote on this and then we make the motion to adopt the policy?
Yep, I think for the cleanest thing to do would be to vote on Alder Owens's motion, and then if that passes, that would become part of the policy that's being
Okay.
proposed. And then you could have a motion to adopt the policy, and at that time, if Alder Jacobs or any other member of the body wanted to make additional motions to amend, you'd be free to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just forgot where we were. Sorry about that.
Okay, can you please read the roll? Does everybody understand what they're voting on?
Just,
Rex's motion.
yeah, I got it.
Fair enough. Owens,
Aye.
Rosas,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Comstock,
Aye.
Crombie,
Aye.
Drangler,
No.
Jacobs,
No.
and that motion passes 5-2.
Okay, so now we need to have somebody make a motion to adopt the policy.
That's correct.
So do we have a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Now I would like to make
Okay.
the amendment to alter section 5 to make those residents ex officio, non-scoring, non-voting members.
I'll second it.
So not to have any advisory only, right?
They can advise verbally, but they can't score and make decisions.
Then we're right back to having just staff score it. Why even have them there?
By that definition, we're right back to having just the council votes yes or no. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, Rex, right?
Well, eventually it will, of course, yeah.
Yeah, eventually it should come down to that. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And any other, Alder Baker, did you have anything you wanted to? Okay. Okay. Any other discussion before we vote on the amendment?
No.
Okay, can you please read the roll?
Owens,
No.
Rosas,
Aye.
Baker,
No.
Comstock,
No.
Crombie,
No.
Drangler,
Aye.
Jacobs.
Aye.
And that motion fails 4-3.
Okay. So next is to make a motion to approve the policy.
That motion is
Did we-
already on the floor, Madam
Oh,
President.
yes, it was. I'm sorry. Oh, all these
So-
amendments. Okay.
If there's any additional amendments, Madam President.
Is there any additional amendments? Alder Baker.
May I ask a question though, please? Process on this is that I think there are other things that were in the draft that we have that we really need to consider. And so is this the discussion time to do that or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, you're still recognizing
Alder
me?
Baker, yep.
Okay. Just checking.
Sure.
I think there are things like in the document itself, talking about the emergency fund and needs some definition in there, some clarity on what is an emergency or an exigent circumstance. How do you define that? Are there caps? Are there no timeline? What's going on there? We need to have better definition of that. I think that we talked about the work groups already. I don't think we have there's no area in there that talks about funding categories, maximums or minimums that people can ask for. How do they know what to ask for? We need to chat about that. What cost and the money that they receive, what's it eligible for? Can they use it for salaries? Can they use it for a fire engine? How can that money be used? I don't think that that's fine.
relationship with a particular partner to now RFPs, where you could change partners on an annual basis. And so I think Alder Owens is trying to give some assistance to those longtime partners that that partnership could be longer than 1 year. So I think that's what he's trying to accomplish. Whether that's been done or not, I leave in your hands.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's important to recognize that. What I'm having trouble with is on the basis of what are you going to make those determinations? And I don't think that's been clearly spelled out.
Do we actually have a motion?
Alder Rosas, did you have something?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we table this.
Okay.
Second.
I think that we need further discussion on it, and we're kind of on the right track, but there's still a lot of questions unanswered.
And what date would you want it to be tabled?
The next meeting.
Next meeting will be fine.
In February?
Is that okay? Cool.
Be
But
February
we already
17th.
have a motion on the table.
A motion to table takes precedence over the motion
Yep.
on the table. So that
Okay.
is now the item we're discussing.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to make sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on this at all? Alder Dringler?
Oh, no, not on tabling it.
Okay.
I apologize, but a motion to table is not normally debatable. So we would vote.
Oh, yes, yes.
Well,
The
that's
motion
tabled.
to table until the February 17th count meeting.
Okay. So can you please read the roll?
Owens,
Aye.
Rosas,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Comstock,
Aye.
Crombie,
Aye.
Drangler,
No.
Jacobs,
Aye.
and that passes 6-1.
All right. Moving on. Consideration, discussion, and possible action on the request to apply for the fiscal year 26, I think? Or does that stand for fiscal year? Okay. Build grant on Clearmar Drive Corridor Extension Planning Project. And that is going to be David that's going to be presenting this.
Thank you, Madam President. Hello, everyone. So I'm here to request approval to apply for a build grant. This stands for Better Utilizing Infrastructure to Leverage Development. Yeah. And this is a federal grant administered by the U.S. DOT Federal Highway Administration, and it's really designed for projects with significant local or regional impact, which really often means that there's significant expense, complicated environmental processes, and so on and so forth. So in this calendar year, no less than $75 million will be awarded to planning projects, which is great. That helps our case. And 50% of all funds are set aside for rural projects, which this would be one of them. So again, those are kind of good numbers in our favor. We actually applied for this last year as part of fiscal year 25, and the application overall did very well despite not being selected. So this year we have a good chance at being a project that is designated as highly rated, which would give us a chance at selection and then allow us to automatically advance to that kind of senior review in subsequent years. So it's really kind of an important thing. The criteria typically stays the same, so you can reapply every year. And it usually does take a couple of cycles to be successful with this grant. So this grant would be used for planning and designing an extension of Clearmar Drive from its current terminus to Bailey Road. I'm going to show a map real quick here just for context. So here we've got Highway 151, Main Street, O'Keefe Avenue, Clearmar Drive, Walker Way. So it's right in the middle there. And if we go south along Clearmar, so we're talking about Prairie Lanes and the post office. If we go all the way down to the bottom, we have Devon's Chocolate, a factory here, and then the railroad. Beneath that then is the wastewater treatment plant. And so this would be planning and designing to extend Clearmar Drive from its current endpoint all the way to Bailey Road. And I'm going to just switch my share quick. So this project has been kind of long planned. There were efforts previously around planning a new public works campus. And this is a proposed possible alignment with that Public Works campus. And so kind of key points here, you've got the wastewater treatment plant, you've got Cobusin, which is just north of this alignment, and then a potential future Public Works campus. So this is the kind of proposed alignment. What we're looking at is really two parts to this project. One of them is building a road, and the other is restoring the creek, the Koshkonong Creek. And through this area, I don't know how long ago, it was engineered and straightened to try to create arable farming land that largely isn't very successful because of how wet the land is. Like, it still is wetlands. We heard from some of the local residents last year. We did a public engagement, and they say the farmers have a hard time farming it at all because they might get crops in, but good luck getting it out in the fall if it's rainy or anything like that. So part of this project would be building that street, and then also looking at restoring the Koshkonong Creek. The road itself would be 2 travel lanes, and then we would be looking at putting a shared use path on one side, and that would connect into a bunch of paths on the south side and a bunch of future paths planned in that area. So real quick, I think I mentioned the benefits here is this would be a big support for the Public Works campus project, as well as future growth kind of south of Koshkonong Creek. And the other big one is when flooding happens on the Koshkonong Creek, Bird Street actually is designed for the creek to overflow it. And I think in 1996, 2000, and maybe 2018 that happened. I don't know if it fully overflowed, but it got pretty close. And so this would be an alternative route to get in and out of the city from Bailey Road. We would design it to be resilient to that flooding, whereas Bird Street is designed to kind of overflood. And so that's actually one of the strong parts of the argument to the feds and one of the benefits to the community. What you should know, Public Works Committee recommended that Council authorize us to do this, and there is a potential fiscal impact. So because this is a rural project, it's eligible for it to be 100% federally funded. However, the way the administration is kind of looking at this grant right now, what they are saying is if you're willing to offer a higher local share, that could make your grant more competitive. And so we are going to be building into our grant an offer of up to a 10% local share to, if we essentially have 2 grants that are, the same rating, that we're saying we're willing to pay that 10% local share if that helps us get across the finish line. So that is the fiscal impact of this.
Okay, thank you, David. So you're looking for a motion for us to approve, to authorize staff to apply for this grant. Okay. All right, Alder Jacobs.
I have a question for you. Actually, first I have a comment. This is for general consumption. It's actually Claremere, named for Clarence and Mary Mess, who donated the property, right? So that's dazzle your friends at cocktail parties this weekend with that.
I have outed myself as not being a local. It's true.
Okay. But the second is a question I have. So this is an issue that has been in front of me for the 10 plus years I've been on the council. The people in Scenic Point are very divided on this. Some are favoring it. Those who are opposed are vocally very opposed. My question for you that would be useful for me to talk to them is, if we do not get this grant, will we still pursue that road?
So that's a great question. I think
that's why I asked it.
The complexity of this is that it's going to be a very expensive project because of the wetlands that we would have to go through. So I don't know that the city really would have that capacity. I can't really speak for what where we might be in a couple of years, maybe 5-10 years. But I think really the hope is that a federal grant will really make that feasible. So I don't know that I have a good answer. I don't know that anyone else here can really say.
So I'm looking to my left. Does anyone else have an answer over here to that question?
I mean, ultimately, Alder Jacobs, it would be a policy decision by the city council to determine if we were unsuccessful in getting the grant, but you still wanted to move forward with the project. You'd have to recognize that it's going to be funded locally without the assistance of either state or federal grants. So if the project was desirable enough that the city council wanted to allocate resources to it, you obviously have the ability to do that. What David is mentioning is that our CIP is pretty full, and a grant would help us not only complete the project, but complete it in a timely manner. And so grant funding would be highly desirable for this project, but you could ultimately decide, if unsuccessful, you still want to move forward and allocate local resources to it.
Okay, so my next question is, since you mentioned the difficulty regarding the wetlands, there's a general policy about trading wetlands when you develop wetlands, okay? Right. There's an issue here, though, which is, in my mind, those are naturally wetlands. And just because you decide to designate some other place wetlands doesn't solve the problem that these are naturally wetlands, okay? So if we were to do this artificial repositioning of wetlands, I would ask that we develop a policy, at least in this particular case, that we multiply the trade. We're not going to trade 1 acre for 1 acre because it wouldn't be natural anyway, okay? And I also think we should consider protecting the Koshkonong Creek, and maybe that's where we would ask that acreage. Maybe that's for future discussion, but I'd like everyone here to be aware that that's in my mind right now, okay?
Sure, and I did want to clarify one thing on that, which is that is generally the case when you're filling wetlands. So if you were to want to develop a building there and you were to fill that wetlands, whereas I think what we're proposing is a roadway which would impact flooding, and then actually within the kind of natural floodway is to use design elements to kind of restore it to more natural. So we actually would be increasing its capacity for stormwater management and so on. So there is a chance that we may not actually need to build more wetlands other places, but we actually would be kind of restoring the quality of that wetlands from its current condition. So it's just a clarification there as far as kind of building and fill versus what we're doing, which would be a little bit different.
Thank you.
Alder Rosas.
Well, same question that Alder Jacobs had. We're going to get funding here from DOT. Are they going to impose this eminent domain on that road that we're talking about?
So this would be funded by the US DOT. This would still be a local project, right? So ultimately, we would be kind of driving anything there. I believe that we own all of the property that is in question. I can't say exactly, but it runs right along the wastewater treatment plant area, and I know that. I think part of it would go through that property and then maybe some other parcels there. So I can't say that we might not need to acquire right of way. I think typically eminent domain is one of the last things that you would use. We would, seek to purchase that property as part of the process prior to any sort of eminent domain.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Alder Comstock.
I've got a couple of questions. One, when we're dealing with a grant, it's more than one step. Is that correct? We approve the application, and then if it's awarded, then we approve accepting it. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Could you help me understand where the $99,974 is going to come from? Assuming we get it, and you're going to offer up to 10%, where do you anticipate that coming from?
So I can probably answer that question for you. If awarded the grant, we could then amend our CIP and borrowing that we do